Well, welcome back, everybody. Everyone knows the phrase, content is king, but as my audiences migrate online, who is ruling that kingdom? Well, this morning, Yahoo presents a discussion about storytelling and the technology that fuels it. To introduce his guests, some of whom you'll recognize, please welcome EVP of America's region for Yahoo, Ross Levinsohn. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Being able to tell a story well is perhaps the toughest job in the world. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to hear from two of the real pioneers, Robert Redford and Ben Silverman. When I joined Yahoo about 6 months ago, what struck me was the incredible canvas that Yahoo had and an even bigger audience that existed there. Each and every month, Yahoo touches about 700 million people around the world. We're the #1 site in 12 categories in the United States. We're #2 in 7 more. From news to sports to finance to entertainment, autos, real estate, we were dominating in every single category. In fact, we're the #1 site in the United States and have been for 8 months in a row. It struck me that we were very much like a big studio or a big network. In fact, we are the network for the digital age. But we needed a transformation. We needed to plant a flag and stand for something. We are embracing creativity and expression. We're aligning our massive distribution with storytellers. We've planted our flag as the premier digital media company in the world. Our goal is simple, really, to create personal digital experiences on every platform: the web, mobile, tablets, television. We are a content company, and we're doubling down on content, both original and licensed, and we're doubling down on the people who create it. Very few have ever been able to tell a story as well as Robert Redford. As a filmmaker, his films include Ordinary People, A River Runs Through It, Quiz Show, The Horse Whisperer, The Legend of Bagger Vance, and recently, The Conspirator. As an actor, he created indelible characters. Johnny Kelly Hooker in The Sting, Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby, the Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Bob Woodward in All the President's Men, and my personal favorite, Roy Hobbs in The Natural. And of course, there are many more. In his own words, storytellers broaden our minds, engage, provoke, inspire, and ultimately connect us. Have a look at this.
It started quite simply, which was to create a mechanism that would give an opportunity to new artists have a place to work free of competition and the pressures of money. Putting it up where I had some land in Utah to see what would happen when they could be working in conjunction with nature. See what that might provide or provoke. Not many people knew much about Utah in the late 50s and early 60s. Utah was off the map then. So I came here in 1961, bought 2 acres of land for $500, built my own cabin on it. That's how it started.
It is my great pleasure to welcome actor, director, producer, businessman, environmentalist, philanthropist, and the founder of the Sundance Institute and the Sundance Film Festival, Robert Redford. Welcome. So, here we are in the late 1970s, and you're on top of the world. #1 box office star in the world, just directed Ordinary People, which would go on to win an Oscar. You got everything in your hands, and you decide to start something new and take a risk. And here comes Sundance. What got you to do that? Why at that point in your career did you say, I got to reset and do something different?
I had always done that. I had always, maybe it was the way I grew up and the place I grew up. Artificiality was very prevalent in the area that I grew up because it was near the film business. Even though my neighborhood was what would be called lower working class, it was surrounded by the hype of the movie industry. So I was inclined as a kid never to take that too seriously. But when I got involved in film, in the performing arts, I saw some things happening in 1980 that said there was going to be a change. What it was that because I had enjoyed a career in the mainstream where I was allowed to make smaller films of more risky storytelling, because I would do the larger films. And so I would say, look, I'd like to tell this little story about yada, yada, yada. They say, well, we don't think that's very commercial, but if you want to do it, if you make it under $2 million and you're going to do the larger one, that's fine. And then things changed around 1980, and I could see films that I was more attracted to, the more humanistic side of cinema. Things were shifting. There were a couple of things happening. One was there was an explosion in between 79 and 80 of cable and video. At the same time, the mainstream industry that I was a part of was showing signs of becoming more centralized and narrowing down and following the youth market because, Hollywood, as it's known, is a business. So it's going to follow the money. And the money was showing signs of going younger and younger, and also new technology was creating ability to have special effects more dominant and so forth. Anyway, while that was going on, I saw this division taking place that would leave empty a category that I was very attracted to, which was the more offbeat kinds of films, but they were more realistic. They should all be entertaining, but they were more realistic, and they were more on the human side of cinema rather than the graphic cartoon side. So that led to the idea of starting Sundance. And what Sundance was in the beginning, because things, when you start one step at a time, and you have no idea how it's going to go. So the first was the Sundance Labs, which was creating a space and a place to support new artists, new voices in the film business. They would be more offbeat from where the mainstream was. Not against the mainstream, but maybe in addition to that. And of course, no one knows if it's going to work or not. You try it. It's risky because it's not been done. And so those are tough times. Anyway, that's why I did it, because I saw a gap forming that might not be filled, and it seemed like a spot to go for. And the other part was on the distribution side. That was development, and that was nonprofit. So creating a space, the only thing I could afford, I couldn't have afforded to do that in the urban environment of New York or Los Angeles. So it was the land that I owned in the mountains in Utah. And I thought, well, who knows what will happen if you put nature against art? It might have a positive influence. Anyway, the lab started, and like anything, it was a tough start because there was nothing like it. And then at a certain point, I saw that once we had succeeded in developing these projects for the artists so that they would get made, films that would get made, suddenly I realized there was no place for them to go because the mainstream was more focused on its own interests. So that led to the idea of the festival. And then it was a series of events which I won't bore you with after that.
So Hollywood is compressing at the time less artistic films, more commercial films, yet distribution is exploding. You've got cable exploding, you've got new ways to distribute. Do you look at today and you look at the likes of Yahoo or YouTube or other ways to distribute platform, do you say this is an amazing time for creators of content and people who are creating advertising, new platforms? Does that resonate to that time back then for you?
Well, in a way, I mean, look, the only thing that really succeeds is change. And if you look at that and you look at change as something positive rather than something negative, then you want to hook into it and be ready for whatever comes with it. So the idea of starting something in 1980, I mean, we live in such different times now, but the motive or the purpose remains the same, which is devoted to storytelling, which is content, devoted to supporting new voices in content, therefore infusing the industry with new blood, new freshness constantly. And I feel that that's my personal feeling, that that's a good thing, because how easily certain things can go dead, particularly when they're successful. And you have to be wary of success because it's got a dark side to it. So you want to create something that's going to be fresh, and as change comes, you float with it because you're on the side of content. And for me, it's always been content, which is storytelling, because that's something that's very strong in my mind, the power of storytelling, because it covers about just all territories and places.
What makes a good story for you?
Well, for me, sex. No. No.
Good night, everybody.
Well, what makes a good story? I guess for me personally, it would be something that is telling a story about something you don't know, you haven't known, that hits your gut and your heart, which means your emotions. That, to me, is a good story. And if you're lucky, maybe something that will inform you in a way that you haven't been informed before.
Making a good story generally involves risks, something you've seemed to have been comfortable with your whole career, whether it's for a movie or a television show or even an ad. Is risk a part of your life, or is it just something you sort of came naturally?
Well, I guess you could combine those and say it came naturally and it's a part of my life. You know, I think risk was always there with me. I did not see it as a negative thing. I saw it as a kind of adventure, and I sought adventure in my life because I wanted to push out. I think that I've always sort of been against convention. Conventional formulas and conventional thought has never appealed to me. I've been more interested in something that was off to the side of that, or what I would call the space in between things that are obvious. That's always appealed to me. So I would follow that impulse, and that would take you into the area of risk. And I think I see risk as not a dangerous thing, but something that can be positive. It has negative parts to it. But I just think that's life. You know, you can't imagine a life that's perfect. It's going to have negative parts. So risk has that. But on the other hand, by taking risks, I think you have the chance to explore new territory. And if you explore new territory, you might have an opportunity that leads to another opportunity. And I guess that's the way I see it.
So when you started Sundance, here you are sort of at the top of the game. I'm imagining the studios thought you might have been a little off the wall doing it, and it probably didn't, well, I remember it didn't take off instantly. Was there sort of a moment for you at Sundance? Was there a film, something that you said, wow, it just changed?
Well, you know, when you start something new, I mean, nobody votes for a new idea. I mean, if you really have passion about it, if you really believe in it, but it's offbeat, then you're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to grind it out yourself. So that's what happened with Sundance. And I think if you're prepared to do that, and you're prepared to accept that either defeat or slow movement or possible failure, then you have to have persistence and you have to have passion to push it through, which I had. I just felt this idea was something that was right for its time, and it would make me feel good doing it. And then you have to surround yourself with people that support that idea, and then you just grind. So no, there was no support from Hollywood. There was nothing against. They weren't against it. They just thought it was, what's he doing? You know, why is he doing that? And, you know, like my agents. My agent said, we just want you to just make movies. What are you doing with that? So you have to have persistence. And then you either make it or you don't. And then when you start to have some success, then you have to look, well, why did that happen? I think with Sundance, it was word of mouth eventually, particularly with the festival. And then finally there was product that came across. That was the first product that came across that we supported was Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And we ran that with a double reel system. It wasn't even finished yet. And I said, this feels like something new and fresh. And it won the award at Sundance. And I think that put us a bit on the map. And then it went on to Cannes to win the, whatever you call it, the golden thing. And so that's how, that was probably the product. And then there was other product that came afterwards.
So it's obviously Sundance has just become an amazing moment each year for creative talent, and throughout the year it's a creative haven for folks. And we've had incredible talent run through there: Tarantino and Soderbergh and Julie Taymor and Stanley Tucci, and the list goes on and on. How at this point do you keep it authentic and pure?
Well, I think you're touching on something that I think is pretty important. If you're talking about a brand, and I guess I don't like the word, frankly, I don't like the word, but suddenly you've got a brand. Whether you like it or not, it's a brand. So what do you do with it, and why did it become a brand? And I think authenticity is one factor. Quality is another factor. Both of those can lead to the issue of trust, and I think if you're trusted, that's a pretty strong thing, but you have to have a certain amount of integrity to do it. You can't sell out. When you have success, you have to be aware that there's a dark side to success that you should be wary of, not just fold yourself into it and gobble up whatever comes your way. So you have to take care. You have to take care. So authenticity to me is just being real. And in a world that we're now in, which is increasing, which things are getting, it's very hard to tell what's real and what's not real in the environment we live in today. So I think a brand, if you want to call it that, that's trusted is a lot. Then the other area is quality. And that's a matter of opinion, of course. You know, for me, it's in the content. If you tell a story that's well told and it can touch the emotion, then that is a certain quality. But it doesn't have to be necessarily a conventional thing. I mean, there's pop culture and there's pop convention, which I think is fine. I mean, it's a broad industry, and that doesn't appeal to me as much as going, like Freud said, always look in the other corner, you know, that go to places that are more off-center and find the stories there and bring them forward. And to me, I think what you're accomplishing if you do that, and I think Sundance has to a degree, is bringing artists and audience together. The initial idea for Sundance was to create opportunities for new artists to have a place to develop and work, and maybe get their work out there, do whatever we could to get their work out there, which led to the festival. But I think that in supporting artists, it leads to another opportunity that I didn't see in the beginning. I mean, it just happened. I suddenly realized, wait a minute, by not knowing, the first year we started the festival, for example, there was just one theater in Park City, which is not Sundance, by the way. Park City is a place that we rent for 10 days in the winter because it has the infrastructure and it has all the accoutrements that you would want for a large crowd of people. But in the very beginning, just one theater, just a few films, and maybe 100 people came. Now there's 60,000 people came, so the thing grew enormously. Well, what happened halfway along the road, I suddenly realized, because we invited audiences in, whoever would come, to be a part of the action. In other words, we would bring the artists on the stage with their dogs, family, kids, whatever, and let the audience ask questions and engage with them. And then suddenly the audiences were increasing and becoming more and more diverse, and I suddenly realized, wait a minute, what we've done is taken one opportunity for supporting artists and created another opportunity for audiences to engage with the artists. So you're growing both. And that's when I realized that we really had a two-way street that we could work with, which is bringing audiences and artists closer together. And that might increase the interest in the business.
It's amazing when one looks at your career and you've managed to blend incredibly big Hollywood blockbusters with incredibly important messages. And I assume there was a time in your career where you were leveraging that star power to get these other movies made, which you mentioned earlier helped lead you to Sundance. And you stayed incredibly well-grounded through it all, which is a pretty tough thing. Here we are in Cannes, where you've been before. And we were talking a little bit earlier about your first time in Cannes and then your next time in Cannes. It's actually an interesting juxtaposition of life for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to hear about it?
Yeah. I'm sure they do.
Well, what happened was when I was younger, I was kicked out of college. And that was right, because I felt that my education was going to be in getting out in the world and experiencing other cultures and other people and so forth. So I was not a good student. My mind wandered. So anyway, I left. And what I wanted to do at that point in my life when I was 18 was to be an artist. And so I wanted to go to Europe because I wanted to experience other cultures. So I saved up some money. I worked in an oil field in California and saved up money to last me for a year, and I came to Europe. And I got exactly what I was looking for. I got a very tough existence. You live hand to mouth. You develop resources and creative impulses to get by, and that was good. I met new people with different points of view. That was good, which broadened my own point of view about my own country because of the various opinions France or Italy or Spain would have about America, and I would hear about it. So it was exactly what I was looking for. And so I was hitchhiking from two art schools, one in Paris, and I was on my way to Florence, Italy. And I was hitchhiking across, and it was really rough. It was the end of winter, and anyway, I had a really rough time. And I came through cold. It was cold, and sometimes I didn't get a ride, and about freeze to death. And so I was dumped by a truck in Cannes. And it's the first time I'd been here. And it was late at night. There was no place to stay. I was exhausted. And I was walking along. And I was so tired. And I figured it was too late to go try to find a place. And it was a strange place I'd never been in. And so it was out here. Where are we? This is the Palais, yeah? So there was a pier, and I went under the pier and in the sand, and I unzipped the bag, put my lower body in the bag, and took some clothes out, made a pillow, and had my overcoat on. And I went to sleep in the sand, but it was right underneath the Carlton Hotel. And so I was looking up, and I would hear noise, and I would hear music, and I would hear laughter and gaiety and people having fun and wearing tuxedos and money, and I thought, oh, God, what must that be like? You know, what is it like to be in that place in a tuxedo with money and gambling and I'm lying there in the sand. Okay, so now that's that. I go on my way. 16 years later, I'm in Cannes with a film. And I'd forgotten about that, and I was at the Carlton Hotel. And there were people bringing caviar and roses and champagne going in and out. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So I'm putting on a tuxedo, and I opened the French doors there because of all the noise down in the street. There's flash bulbs and people like these guys, you know, paparazzi. And not that you're paparazzi, but there was all that going on, all this action. And suddenly I look and I see the pier. I thought, God, and I saw myself lying under the pier, wondering what it was like to be in the place that I now was.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, today, what keeps you going today?
Sex?
Yeah.
No.
Seems to be a theme here.
No. I think what keeps you going, well, for me, it's always been going back to zero, is what I would call it. In other words, you achieve something, you push yourself, that you have some fortune, some good fortune, and one opportunity suddenly opens up to another one, you follow it. And at a certain point, when you have success, it's time to say, hold it, I could lose it here very easily. And so that's when I call it returning to zero. And you take yourself back, you take a break, and you take yourself back to some sort of a beginning for yourself and start new and start fresh. And so that's one thing I think is probably, if you reach a certain point where you feel you've pushed yourself in this particular area as far as you can, because what is life? We don't know what there is after or around, and so why not take full advantage of being here, which means taking some risks and pushing out. So when you start to get clouded with what success can bring, you stop, or I stop and go back. You say, I'm going to start again like it's all just happening for the first time. So you take new chances and new initiatives and new risks, and that keeps you fresh, keeps your mind fresh. That's one thing. The other thing is that I think there are certain passions that I have as a person that I followed along with the career, and that's one on the environment. Being politically active on the environment with all the erosion that's taking place on almost a daily basis. And then social justice. I think that the idea of justice is an ongoing thing, and I think the more people that are committed to supporting social justice in these unjust times we're living in, that's also important. So I think putting all those things together is what keeps me going.
So we've got an audience full of creatives here, and I'd be curious what you would tell them other than, stay true to your sort of mission and have a lot of sex. What else? You work with a lot of young, up-and-coming artists all the time in Sundance. Do you help guide them a little bit? Do you give them some sage advice?
Well, yeah, I mean, what we try to do at Sundance is create a safe place, a place where they will feel safe. I mean, we keep all the parts that come with my industry, the mainstream part of the industry. Particularly in areas of money and finance, we keep that away. So it's a place where they can try and take some risks and look at failure not as something that's the end of a road or a final defeat, but something that's a step forward in terms of growth. So we encourage taking risks. We encourage, it's about freedom. So freedom and taking risks, I think they can be aligned, and then the fact that there's pure nature right at your grasp. I mean, you're in a different environment. We say, okay, because it's pretty intense there at our labs, if things get rough or you feel like you're getting clogged or blocked, take a walk, go by the waterfall, take a walk up the paths, get on a horse, get lost, get away and think, and see what effect nature can play in the process. And it's turned out to be good. But mainly it's creating a safe place where people will be able to take risks and not fear them.
So I get to be a fan for a second. Did you have a favorite movie? That's the first question. And the second question, because The Natural was such an important movie for me growing up, did you actually hit the ball? Was that you, or was there a stunt guy in there?
No, that was me. Favorite movies, I've been asked that before. There's no one favorite in particular. They're different ones for different reasons. Butch Cassidy was the most fun because I was in an area of the country that I love and feel very connected to. I could ride horses, I could do stunts, which I like. I developed a friendship with somebody that I grew very close to, Paul. I just had fun. And the interesting thing is that the original title of that, I don't know if you knew this, but the original title of that film was The Sundance Kid and Butch Cassidy. And that Paul, I wasn't in the movie because I wasn't as well known. I wasn't well known hardly at all, but Paul was. And the studio did not want me in the film because they felt that I was not a match for him. So he was going to play the Sundance Kid, and that was similar to what he had played before. Anyway, things turned eventually around, and the director wanted me. And when I met him in a bar in New York, I was sent up for Butch Cassidy because I'd done a comedy in the theater before. And I said, well, yeah, I can do that, but that's not the part that interests me. I feel closer to the other one. And he got intrigued by that. Anyway, make a long story short, he felt that Paul, the real Paul, was more like Butch Cassidy. And so it was switched. And whatever part Paul was going to play was what would be the first name used. So when he decided to play Butch Cassidy, it was changed from Sundance Kid to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Great.
So anyway, that was fun.
Yeah.
The Natural, because I got to play ball and do my own hitting and throwing. All the President's Men, because the odds were against it ever getting made for a whole bunch of reasons. Other films that have been personal, most of the films I've done have some personal interest for me. River Runs Through It, fly fishing, love of that sport, and a story that fit it, I thought, beautifully. The Candidate, because that was a film that was initially supposed to be a trilogy around the subject of winning. When I was a kid growing up, we didn't have much. We didn't have a car. We'd take a walk to the theater, standalone theater, but I played sports, and baseball was one of the sports. And I love sports. I love competition. I love the excitement of it. It was something I could do, and it kind of took me out of a rough atmosphere. But I remember a lot of slogans after the Second World War were floating around, a lot of slogans, you know, American slogans that would elevate you forward. And one of them was, that we were given was, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, but how you play the game. And I came to find out that was a lie. And that in this country, everything mattered as to whether you won or not. And so in my head, that was a story. I then wanted to tell that story about, well, guess what? It's all about winning. And therefore, if it's about winning, is there a Pyrrhic victory in winning? So I had this idea of doing a trilogy around the subject of winning that would involve three areas that were strong, dominant in our society. One was sports, the other was politics, and the other was business. So I got two made, and the other I never got a script on. But the Downhill Racer that was 1969, and that was taking a stab at saying commerciality is going to take over this sport. And then once you win, what have you won? You know, what is it a Pyrrhic victory? And then the other was The Candidate. And the idea behind The Candidate in 1970 was to suggest that what we were seeing was that we elect people by cosmetics and not substance. And that was the story, but it was all about winning. Mm-hmm. So there were lessons learned based on finding out that there was myth to a lot of the slogans that I'd been given as a kid. So then you wanted to tell a story about the American life you were growing up with and what you were seeing in contrast to what was ballyhooed. Yeah. So those were some of the films that I enjoyed making.
So what's next?
Next is the company that I have, because of the new technology and the new advantages. It's an exciting time. It's also, well, it's Dickensian. It could be the worst of times, but I mean, there's some exciting parts to it. And I think that there's some dangers. One of the dangers that I found is just because something is invented doesn't mean you have to use it. And I've seen some mistakes made when we jump into things just because they're new and exciting, and everybody starts competing to get a grip on it when no one's thinking about how valuable it's really going to be, like 3D. You know, 3D, when I was a kid, I remember seeing the first 3D movie when I was about 14. And it was a terrible movie, but they had this one moment where somebody threw a spear. You know, ooh, but you had to wear stuff. And it was a novelty that didn't fly. Now it's back again. So what happens, you see a lot of people wanting to grab it because they don't want to miss out, rather than really analyzing, is it really good for that particular movie, which I don't think 3D does apply to every movie ever made. And so therefore, you have to be kind of careful as you go. That's one thing. Just because something is invented doesn't mean you have to do it. You have to find out if it fits who you are and how you want to do things. for me, my company, the new venture that's being started is that with the new changes and the new changes that new technology is bringing, there are new advantages for viewing. And you can, shorts, documentaries. I mean, I remember years ago when we inserted those into our festival, there was no venue for shorts. And there was no support for documentaries. That was back in late 80s. And now documentaries have gained traction in the marketplace. The shorts, you have cell phones, you have smaller screens. So now there is a venue for shorts. So content has new opportunities for distribution. So my company is going to be involved with online, but all content. It's all going to be about content. And also being able to be a link between what Sundance does in the nonprofit, which is development. Development, now there are labs for documentaries, there are labs for shorts, there are labs for film, music composition. And so to be able to be a link between that, the nonprofit part, and the profit part, which is distribution of the channel and cinemas and so forth.
Well, we obviously believe in everything you're doing at Sundance, so much so that we're proud and thrilled to announce that we'll be sponsoring the shorts category at 2012, Sundance 2012, at the film festival. Each year you get about 6,000 submissions, about 80 official selections, and Yahoo will be the presenter of next year's shorts program. We'll also be debuting many of those shorts online, and we'll have some online voting for folks. So we're incredibly thrilled and proud to be in business with you and to support your vision there.
Well, I'm also pleased because you know, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. But I mean, the idea of showing new work, I mean, what it does, it fits a 30-year plan for me, you know, supporting new work and getting it out there. And then you get into where are you going to, I guess you could say that after 30 years experience, there are people that have followed us and some have tried to copy us, you know, with a festival or what have you. That's to be expected. But if you keep moving and trying new things and stay attached to your original mission or purpose, then you can be okay. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge, is to stay true to your original purpose. So what can I offer you? You know, I say, well, there's all kinds of product out there. There's all kinds of new names and new companies and new. So what can Sundance offer you? And I guess this may sound arrogant, but after 30 years of trial and error and establishing a certain authenticity, I guess, we can offer you that we might be chosen. If there's an array of product out there with different companies, they say, well, I'll go with that one because I can trust it. That's something that we can offer you.
Well, we trust you and believe in you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and thank you.
So, our next storyteller is Ben Silverman. Ben launched the reality TV craze in the U.S. in the 90s with projects like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and The Weakest Link. He created and executive produced Emmy and Golden Globe winning shows like The Office, Ugly Betty, and The Biggest Loser. As co-chairman of NBC Entertainment and Universal Media Studios, Ben transformed the TV business model, embracing alternative delivery methods, migrating content across platforms, and developing new innovative financing structures. He's currently the CEO of Electus, a next-generation studio producing for all platforms, and we have been in business with him. He was our first big original production partner. We had an instant hit with Ready, Set, Dance, sponsored by State Farm, and we're developing a new slate of programs that we'll be talking to all of you about. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Silverman.
Thanks, Ross. Nice to see you.
So, you heard from Mr. Redford. Any thoughts?
Well, obviously, it's great to follow Robert Redford. I'd like to think he was opening for me, but by the exit doors open, I get it. But clearly embracing risk and being a humanist, those also can deliver mass audience, and for people to believe in what they do as passionately as he does, and to create so many ongoing successes is amazing. I mean, the guy is a 400 hitter, to use the natural, who's in the Hall of Fame and still coaching the team and playing.
So you've taken a really interesting approach in your career. You've sort of blazed a trail in reality when nobody was doing reality. You went and changed the way a network did business, and now you've moved to a new platform, your own company, and you're developing for all platforms. Do you have sort of a mindset or a vision for how you create content?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to think about what's next constantly. It's really hard to rest on what you did in the previous show or concept. And as new technologies open up and audiences are connecting to content in different platforms and different arenas, I think it's really important to be as smart and innovative as you can around those, whether it's pushing genres like reality television and game shows, or pushing genres like the single camera comedy with The Office, or pushing genres like the telenovela. You consistently need to be inspired and go to the next if you want real success.
So you, like Robert, you've taken risks.
I think that most of the programming that we've done, whether it's The Tudors, which was a history show with sex, tunics and sex for the first time when no one was doing period pieces, or it's really committing to bringing premium level storytelling to the internet and to media platforms like yours. It requires getting a lot of people together and opening themselves up for potential failure. And you can be early and end up with egg on your face, and you can also time it right and be on the wave. And I think with building early commitments and taking that risk, you end up inheriting your own success. And I think it's incredibly important to also only do that around what you're most passionate about.
So you started a multimedia studio. When you started it, what was the vision for it? And has it migrated at all since you started?
Yeah, the thought process was in running a Big Five media platform at NBC Universal, that it was going to be really hard to push new boundaries when you had to protect entrenched real estate, when there was going to be a constant compromise of not cannibalizing what has gotten you to that place. And I saw an incredible opportunity to shape a company based in the 21st century, and to build a company that didn't require 10,000 acres of land in Burbank, born of the Lumiere brothers technology, but could create a company that could be more nimble and more virtual, but still held true to the most relevant elements of what media and entertainment do best, which is give the audience what they want. And without the audience, you're nothing. And it's also really important to tell stories that are appropriate across mediums. So the kind of shows we do on VH1 are different than the ones we do on Yahoo or NBC, and you really need to build content for the environment to tap into all of its utility. Things that you can do in the internet allow for a lean-in experience. A mouse is different than a remote control. A sitting at your desktop, even as it converges with your flat screen, is very different than sitting on your couch. And I think that's really important as you think creatively and train a generation to build content for today and tomorrow.
So again, we've got a room full of creative people here. What advice or challenge do you have for them?
Well, I really believe that as Mr. Redford said, creating ideas in a vacuum of purity that you truly believe in. Anyone who you're going to enlist on your journey as you seek to get your idea to market, because it's one thing to create it in the vacuum and have it live in the vacuum where it then never reaches impact and an audience connection. But to get the people on your bus, metaphorically, the one that you're driving with your idea, you have to be so passionate about it, and you have to be convinced that it works. You see it all the time in the entrepreneurial space with people and their relationship with their startup ideas, and you see it all the time in the television and internet content space as well. And you almost have to become evangelical. So I would say to anyone, don't take the first no as the last no. Don't even take the 20th no as the last no. If you believe in it, you need to persevere and take all the information that you gather so that you can make the concept hit audience. The other thing I'd say is we are in the most collaborative medium around. You cannot be alone in your sandbox if you want true success. If you're a writer, you need director and actors. If you're a director, you need writer and actors. If you're a storyteller, you need distribution partners and platforms. Not one element of that ecosystem can operate independent of the other, and they all need to come together. And what's so fun to be with you on this stage and to be part of the storytelling section here at Cannes is this is obviously a festival that celebrates creativity, but it celebrates creativity within advertising. And in television specifically, I look back to the 1950s and what gave birth to the initial wave of very creative people, from Sid Caesar to Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. And I brought up Jerry because we're in France. And the fact that those advertisers took that risk. And we just saw it again in the reality television business. Shows like American Idol, like The Biggest Loser, like Survivor, like The Office, would not have made it to air without the support of advertisers who believed in the risk almost more than the platform. And I think it's very exciting what you're doing to bring that conversation together.
Well, it's interesting. Telling a story in 30 seconds or 15 seconds is probably far harder than telling a story in 2 hours. You were, one of the pioneers in actually integrating that message back into the show. I believe, and we believe at Yahoo, that advertising as content it has emerged as perhaps one of the most important things going forward. And now you're spending your time trying to pioneer yet another sort of set of distribution platforms. Do you see it at the time coming where branded entertainment, integrated programming, whatever we want to call it, I go back to the soap opera days of P&G integrating their product on television. Is that day coming for us on digital platforms?
Well, I feel like both because of where the platforms are in audience reach and the desire for advertisers to come in, that there's opportunities to use content as platform. It's all going to be decided by the audience. If we build it and it doesn't reach anyone, then it sits on the floor in failure. But the opportunity to do it in the right way is really at a moment of excitement, especially in the online platforms, and with your audience, because I think there is a sense that the traditional models, although still incredibly successful, are not embracing all their constituents. And when you get a show like The Office, because it was championed by brands, you see that there doesn't need to be any sacrifice in creativity or quality, and you just need to constantly walk that line. I see it all the time now as big-time motion picture directors want to operate and make ads. They want to make television shows, and the television and movie industry is constantly looking for new ideas off of the online platforms and from the advertising community. So I think there's just the convergence of creativity is upon us in the same way that it is of technology, storytelling, and advertising.
And finally, what's next for you and Electus?
We're doing a lot of content, and we're looking to build off of a lot of our successes, whether it's telling stories with you on Yahoo or on College Humor for a certain audience, or upcoming in the first quarter on NBC. We're just trying to bring together the smartest and best storytellers and help migrate the Hollywood franchise to the online franchise and really find best-of-class partners to do it with.
Well, you're doing a hell of a job, and we thank you for being here and spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
It's a
Ben
pleasure.
Silverman.
Thank you. See you later, buddy. Thank you.
So, you heard today from two amazing storytellers and pioneers. I want to thank you for allowing Yahoo to be here. We're changing, and we need the likes of Bob and Ben to join us on this journey, and frankly, we need all of you. We're excited to help transform the way we do business within this industry, and we're excited about providing our platform and canvas to nearly 700 million people around the world every month, and to storytellers like you. We're excited to be in business with the best creatives, the best minds creating great content, great advertising, and we hope that that advertising and content creates emotional responses. We're also changing the way we do business with agencies and clients. We're ripping down the walls and hopefully making it easier for people to work with Yahoo. We believe this is a transformational time in the industry, not just for Yahoo, but for creative talent around the world. I want to thank you for joining us and allowing Yahoo to spend a few minutes with you. Enjoy the rest of the festival.